Okay, well, Jeff, thanks for joining us. End of the day here, beginning of the day for you, but we both live in this funny joined up world that it's the middle of somebody's day somewhere all the time. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you and I share a lot of things, and most of all, I think we share an excitement about the next 10 years. It's looking like just an extraordinary time. I'm pretty old, older than you are, and I can't remember a decade looking as promising as the next one. So let's start with that. I mean, the pandemic, probably not the last pandemic of our lives, but certainly the biggest so far, has made a lot of changes. Where you and I are working from anywhere from home. We're connected. The world has changed. How are you seeing those big changes, those post-pandemic, as if we were post, but we nearly are, those post-pandemic changes? What are you seeing?
Well, I first of all, it's really great to be with you, Stephen. I always enjoy our conversations. You're one of the most interesting people that I ever speak with, and so I'm looking forward to this conversation as well. Yeah, it's hard to say where things are going, but it is very clear that there are indications that the future will not look nearly so much like the past. I mean, I think that many universities, Coursera is almost 10 years old now, and it was started in 2012. The only reason that it could have been started is because of cloud computing. I mean, without broadband and without cloud computing, you can't stream videos and all that. And over the first, 10 years of the company, what we saw was a gradual acceptance of online learning that was really accelerated among all parties, by individuals, governments, businesses, other higher education institutions. Really saw online learning be thrust upon them during the pandemic. And we can go into some of the details of what that looked like. At a high level, for instance, for individuals, we grew from 47 million registered learners in January of 2020 by another 30 million learners in just 2020 alone. In Coursera for Campus, this is for academic institutions. We had 30 customers in February of 2020. We grew to another 4,000 academic institutions using Coursera within 7 months. And so, big push towards online learning. And I think what's going to be most different going forward is the not only online learning but remote work and the ability to have much greater access to job opportunities independent of where you live. I think will be a big game changer in terms of the value of lifelong learning to learners.
Yeah, for sure. And for parts of the developing world who've been a very long way from opportunity, they're now a trackpad click from opportunity, and everything changes. I mean, for me, I characterize it as softer, lower walls, the walls that were built around work and hired rather than school education, the family, rather than the community. All the walls are coming down, getting a little softer and a little lower. And that's quite challenging, I think, for higher education, because we've tended to do higher education behind some ivy-clad walls, that have, protected our quality. And I think that's quite exciting because brings a heap of new players into the game. I mean, the numbers you describe are jaw-dropping, but on the other hand, 2.2 billion kids in the world, all of whom want to do some learning. So, we're having this conversation in 5 years' time. You can stick a few zeros on those numbers, and there's still a way to go. And it's an extraordinary time. Um, I mean, to focus maybe directly onto higher education itself. I mean, one of the joys I think. I mean, I'm a huge Coursera fan, as you know. One of the joys there isn't just the cloud computing; it's the opportunity that the founding fathers, made to put artificial intelligence in there and to make it smart and to deliver things we could never deliver before at all. What are you seeing higher education being able to do that it couldn't do before?
Well, I think that the landscape really does look very different for higher education. It was interesting at the beginning of the pandemic, we put together kind of a point of view on how the pandemic might play out and what the impact that might be directly and then secondary, tertiary impacts on higher education. We got a lot of the basic perspective right. We knew it was going to come in waves. We knew that it was going to start. We realized obviously hospital capacity is kind of number one concern for countries, and then having schools shut down and businesses shut down created a big opportunity to help those institutions, schools and businesses, continue to teach people when they went online, when they had the schools and camp and offices closed. We also figured this would follow with a lot of unemployment, so we launched this workforce recovery initiative. Turns out we have seen a lot of unemployment, and so we've seen governments really step into the educational arena in a way that they haven't before. What I kind of missed, and when you think about it, it's like, what I kind of missed was the amount of venture capital and private equity and other investments that got put into what people call stay-at-home companies during the pandemic, and in particular, higher education, ed tech players. So in India alone, in the last 12 months, about $4 billion have been invested in ed tech. Well, what I kind of missed, but now is becoming pretty clear, is that the number of new educational alternatives, new micro-credentials, new websites, new content providers, new boot camps has absolutely exploded with the arrival of just truckloads of investment capital. And we're now seeing all around the world, universities and colleges coming to Coursera to say, hey, we're seeing competition. Students are actually selecting other ways to get educated, and they're not sure that they need to go to college. We need to stay more current in terms of the curriculum that we offer, the flexibility online, the affordability, the cost. And so they're using Coursera for Campus in order to match a lot of the competitive offerings that are now available to some degree to the first time. And Stephen, to your point, I'd say the biggest impact of technology has been access. The fact that so many players can get into the education game and make education and various credentials available to the 2+ billion people, as you mentioned. So I do think access is kind of number one thing that technology has done. But another thing that has done is created a lot of competition. And when you ask sort of, well, what is it that technology enables in terms of a new way of learning? I mean, clearly, you can learn anytime, anywhere. That's huge. You can learn more affordably. That's huge. It can be much more personalized, just like when you go shopping or you do anything with technology, typically it's going to be more personalized. And there's also something too about technology when it comes to education. There's certain kinds of domains, especially computer science and data science, really benefit from hands-on technology environments where you can learn how to do your craft in an online environment. So really a lot of different impacts of technology, but perhaps one of the biggest is the acceleration of change in higher education.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I kind of try to characterize that as three stages. We've got folk out there in schools and higher ed who say, let's just get back to how we used to do this. It'll be fine. The students will come for 3 years. They'll meet their life partner, and have a good time. And that's not going to happen. And then in the middle, we've got a lot of people who are saying, we can finesse this. We can do it better than we used to do. We can look at the delivery, look at the courses, look at the physical environment, look at everything. We can look at the science of all this. But then somewhere over here, there's a kind of, but where are we going? And that sort of blue sky bit. And I've often put in mind of Steve Jobs. Apple were the first sponsors of my chair, by the way. So back in the 80s, so Steve was a very nice man. And I remember him coming on stage to launch the iPhone and saying something along the lines of, we're going to produce an iPod, I think they were, with a full color screen, and we're going to produce a browser, you can carry in your pocket, and we're going to produce a phone, and hey, look, it's all the same thing. And I'm kind of wondering if, that moment is where you are really, that, we're going to, of course, we can produce university level courses. Of course, we can produce high quality learning in the workplace. And by the way, look at the project we're doing together with our Lighthouse project. We can do this in schools and with the parents of the children in schools. We can do this everywhere. And you know what? It's just the one thing. We call it learning. I think that's kind of where we are with all this. And all those boxes are blown out of the water. So all that competition you're describing, that's the kind of Motorola's and the Nokias, and everybody say, no, this is a phone, this is a phone, this is a phone. But over here, no, this is a phone. And I think over here is, hey, learning. This is what we're about. I think they haven't seen that. I think the venture capital are pouring into the finessing model, but I'm not seeing the blue sky bit over there. There's you. I don't see who else there is on that platform, really.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'll take that analogy. It's a really good one. Yeah, the analogy of the Apple iPhone is interesting because there was another thing, and Steve Jobs, when he first introduced it, what he said was there are a number of apps on this phone, and he when he started, he said Apple will be the only ones who creates apps on our iPhone. Of course, that changed when he realized the value of having a marketplace of suppliers. There's another thing too about technology that creates a very different business model, which is what some people call a platform business model. When you think of Coursera, it's sometimes as easy to lose that it's a platform that was created by professors at Stanford. So it's created by higher education. And today we have 170 universities who created over 5,000 courses. Now, originally it was directly for consumers to use, but now what you see is thousands of other universities are using thousands of courses from hundreds of universities in novel combinations and novel ways. And I do think that this idea of a platform where universities, and now we have 70 industry partners, so Google and Microsoft and IBM and Facebook, they're also creating courses. And these courses are being used by academic institutions. And so I think what's really exciting is the hybridization that is enabled by a platform, not only of the teaching and learning, which is kind of on campus and online, but also of the content players. So industry and university are creating hybrid content. And I'll also say, finally, hybrid credentials. So a lot of people say, oh, is it the college degree or is it a micro-credential? Well, I say it's both. We see people building micro-credentials into their college degrees. We see people integrating online into campus. We see people integrating industry content into university content. It's all really powerfully dynamic and being responsive to a growing change in learning needs that you identified. And I do think you're right. At the end of the day, the question is, what is needed from learning and how might we solve those needs?
It's just learning. And of course, the other hybrid end of all this are the learners, because if I take the example of our parents, and people watching this might not know, but we're offering Coursera courses to our parents of our school children and saying, hey, you've given us your babies, the least we might give you back is accreditation, but what they're looking for is really surprising. I mean, obviously, for a few, they're saying, how can I be a better parent? What can I learn about teaching maths today? They don't do long division anymore. Others are saying, I just want a short course on well-being, and I just want to get my brain back into there. And then, of course, to your point about unemployment, we've got people who are saying, well, I thought I was a business manager in retail, but now retail's gone. And where can I take those skills and apply them in a new place? Maybe health, where can I go with all that? So now what's interesting there, the conversation between the kids and the parent is a multiplier. It's not just a case of the kids are doing something here, the parent, they're saying, oh, that looks interesting, tell me about it. And together, they're accelerating. So there's something about the new user who is, of course, a family, a community, a group that we didn't expect because we never had that before in higher education. So the interesting bit here is, do the users accelerate past the institutions? And what do the institutions have to do to catch up? Well, let's talk again in 5 years and we'll see. All that.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about upskilling for a minute, because my niece is a accident and emergency nurse, and she trained in Glasgow. You can imagine accident and emergency in Glasgow General is a pretty messy place on a Saturday night, So she's got skills. I mean, she's got skills. You wouldn't believe what things people insert in what bits of their bodies, hideous. Then she goes to work in Australia, where she's incredibly valued because they don't have that kind of crisis management. But she's learned things in Australia she never learned in Glasgow. Now she's sitting with a foot in two contexts, and suddenly you start to see how this can play because that training layer that you're providing, that accreditation, the quality, the conversations, sitting on top of multiple contexts is a really accelerating thing. And well, before you did a bit here, you went to there, and I better learn all over again. She's now valuing these different contexts. And we were just saying as we started that both of us been working. I've just opened the school in Riyadh. You were expecting to have a conversation with Abu Dhabi, I think, this morning. We're working all over the world. That's adding value to us.
Yeah.
It's changed our cultural perspective in a really interesting way. So how does Coursera cash in on the multiple cultures out there? We use your Spanish courses, you've got English courses, a little bit of translation. I can see it in Cornish or whatever. How do you do that? How do you become globally global? Is that the AI?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The need for upskilling. I went back and I did I was on a long plane flight a couple of years ago. And I thought, how many people are working age who've never even started college? And so I looked at the gross enrollment ratio. I basically looked country by country. I looked at the population by age and by gender. And then I went back and looked at historical gross enrollment ratios and said, at the time that a 45-year-old in Bangladesh was college age, what was the gross enrollment ratio for men and for women? And then I kind of added it all up. I basically approximated about 2.3 billion people who are working age never even started tertiary education. So to your point, there's a huge pool of people in the workforce, or at least workforce age, who never even went to college, let alone perhaps have college learning that needs to be supplemented as the world changes faster and faster. So it is definitely a global phenomenon. And you totally put your finger on something, which is the need to continually upskill adults who either didn't go to college or went to college a long time ago. And these adults cannot quit their job and move back to some campus. It is an incredible opportunity for higher education to create a lifelong relationship with students who came to your campus, but also students who never had the chance to. And they need to continue to learn throughout their lives because the world is changing so quickly. So new skills, knowledge, new tools are emerging that people need to learn. And there's also a big focus on interdisciplinary. And so even if you did go to a certain school and you learned a certain discipline, chances are that the interaction of that discipline with other disciplines, especially like data science and computer science, has dramatically changed. So the need for upskilling is dramatic. Now, how do we get global? I really have to hand it to the two founders. Andrew Ng, he specializes in data science and AI, and the demand for the demand for those skills is global. And then Daphne Kohler, in the first 18 to 24 months of Coursera, she went and flew around the world and signed up all these universities around the world. So we have, as I mentioned, 170 universities. Many of them are in the North America and in Europe, but we have 15 in Latin America. We have almost 10 now in Russia. We have probably about 15 in India. We have a handful in Australia. We have 10 in China. So the universities are all around the world who are creating courses in multiple languages. And you touched on something too, which is the use of AI to do automatic translation is changing rapidly. So it used to cost us about $10,000 to translate a course manually from English to some other language. We can now reliably get subtitled, so not the audio yet, but with text to speech, that's coming soon. We can reliably get high quality translation of the transcripts from English to any number of languages. There's about
the great thing about it is it learns as it goes. So, the minute you get to a point good enough to put in front of people, that's when it starts accelerating in terms of what it. But it's interesting you touch on the lifelong thing, because we're working here, as you know, with our alumni as well. We're saying to them, hey, you've been a student here, why wouldn't we carry on supporting you? We suddenly realized that the big mistake was allowing anybody to finish. Why would you Why would you stop? We've got people who love doing master's degrees, would like to do it forever. And that's really interesting, because a lot of the youngsters I see value themselves by the community they belong to. I was very interesting. We had a young 18-year-old just won the American Open for tennis, and the papers all treated her as a star. But when she won, she downed her racket and she ran up to the stadium to her team. And she said she dreamt about shaking their hands and hugging them. The dream she had wasn't holding the trophy up or the final trophy. The dream was of reaffirming with her team. And that membership is looking more and more important with all this. Now, that's a tough call for Coursera, because the universities are saying, we're doing membership, you do the courses. But it seems to me that we're not a million miles from you badging up the membership of, hey, I'm a lifelong learner at Coursera. These are my guys, these are my family, And I think how you give that currency, I think, is going to be really interesting. Are you thinking about community at the moment? I know you are with us, but is that a general thought?
It certainly is. I think that the need to belong to a community is getting more and more important. I think as the world fractures and with secularization, I think people want to be part of a group. And I think sports have really taken off because, you root for your team. And I think that's a really big one. And I do think on the learning side, community is important. I think the process of learning is often enhanced by learning with others. And so there's kind of a learning cohort. But I also think that learning credentials and having not only a credential that says this is what I know, but also a credential that says this is who I'm with and this is where I graduated from. I do think that the value of university degrees, something that's hard to be selected for and it's hard to earn, will continue to provide value with that affiliative part of learning with a group of people and graduating and saying, I'm part of this group. So we work with over 30 universities have degrees on Coursera. They issue, real credentials. And so there is both the cohort learning, and there's also, I think, this affiliation of the others who got the same kind of credentials you.
Guessing down the track, there'll be qualifications that you do as a team. We're in Madrid. We have Real Madrid Football Club, pretty good nearby. I mean, they're not quite at their peak at the moment, but when they win things, they all get a medal. They don't sort of come up and, well, Jeff, here's your medal, Stephen, here's your medal, Gareth, you really weren't trying, you don't get one. They get it together. So for me, I think those collaborative, team-based, family learning models coming into the accreditation piece are going to be, that'll be a little bit of the Steve Jobs magic, I think, coming in here as well. Let's talk just for a moment about, because how we doing for time? Let's just talk for a moment about the COVID generation. And for me, I look at them, they've been amazingly resilient. They put up with teachers trying to deliver a standard lecture down the tube, which is pretty grim. They've looked at some high quality content, and maybe some less so. They've been fighting their brother for bandwidth or whatever. And what I've seen is, and we set up a little certificate where they could say what they'd been doing during COVID in their learning. And we treat them as the golden generation that, the last time we had this kind of chaos was in World War II, I guess. Look who came out of World War II, John Lennon, whatever, So this golden generation, and they've all filled in what they've done. So I'm sitting on this lovely data set of tens of thousands of kids, what we did during COVID. And Jeff, it's reaffirming for you, because the three things that I'd characterize it by: number one, they've gone for depth rather than breadth. They found something they want to pursue, and they said, never mind the curriculum, I really want to do rocket science or whatever. And there's, this is learning without limits. They've poured down that route. Secondly, they've done it with others. So there's always been a cohort or other people, not necessarily in their family or somewhere else on the world, people they met in Minecraft or whatever, but they've done it with others. And lastly, they see themselves as global learners located locally. Now, it seems to me that that's That's your business plan absolutely sitting there. So here's a generation who said, this is what we want to do, freed from everything. What do you do about them as they come into higher education? They fit your model, but I'm not sure they fit where higher education is going in some places. How do you help the universities to take on board the pandemic generation, or do they lose them?
No, I don't think they lose them because I think now, if you just look at Coursera for Campus, universities are realizing that the new generation are more independent, they're more online, they're more interested in sometimes niche topics that fascinate them. And no university can do everything by themselves. I think that's another major sort of byproduct of COVID is the need to partner, the need to collaborate, universities collaborating through platforms like Coursera with other universities, but also universities collaborating with businesses and governments. The country of Morocco established a set of standards where every university in Morocco can use Coursera for Campus as part of the core foundational first year of students who are coming into higher education. So I think institutional collaboration is really important. And then you totally touched on it. I think even before the pandemic, younger people are socializing online, they're gaming online, they're independently finding information, some of it high quality, and frankly, some of it misleading. And so they have to figure out how to sort that out. They will expect something really different when they go to school, and they are already starting to expect things that are different at work. So just as you say that about education, I say the same thing about the workplace. They will be far more affiliated with a purpose and an institution, less so about a place. They will have colleagues around the world working on projects that they're passionate about for an institution who might be, half a globe away, but they'll still be a part of this and they'll be working on it. So I think the whole idea of place-based constraints is disappearing both in learning and in work.
In a way, we're kind of losing the literature of communities of practice and substituting communities of purpose. And they're very interesting communities. I
Well
think
said.
we've been chatting here this morning about the crossover between education and health, and how you can build a learning layer across the entire health field, and that's when you start looking at the potential for that, it's fantastic. But Jeff, we're running out of time. You'll have the daughters knocking on the door, demanding transport somewhere or whatever. So, as ever, the time's flown by. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for your candor. There'll be a lot of people watching this, and if they don't know enough about Coursera, I'd tell them to go straight to the website and have a proper look. And if they don't know enough about the future of higher education, they'd better dial into the rest of this event and see what people are saying. And they're not all saying the same thing. So, yeah, but I'm pleased to hear you're still on the page I'm on. So we're either both very wrong, or I think we're on the money.
Thank you so much for having me. As usual, as always, it's been a pleasure, Stephen.
Yeah, me too. And see you next time. Thank you very much. Love to the family. Bye now.
Thank you.